In 2019, during a spiritual retreat at the Vatican, Pope Francis kissed the feet of South Sudanese leaders. The Pope told the leaders, "Peace is the first gift that the Lord brought to us, and the first commitment that leaders of nations must pursue." Join us as we discuss this and more only on Beyond the Headlines. Our guest on the program is Mr. Edmund Yakani, the Executive Director of Community Empowerment for Progress Organization, abbreviated as CEPO. Mr. Yakani has experience in research on sector security reform, governance, human rights, rule of law, and gender-based issues. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you for welcoming me for your show. And thanks to your listeners also are listening through your show.
As the South Sudan struggles to reach a point of peace and stability, global Christian leaders such as Pope Francis and the Most Reverend Justin Welby, Archbishop of Canterbury, took initiatives to engage South Sudanese leaders to bring an end to the conflict in the country. Among the key acts performed was when Pope Francis kissed the feet of South Sudanese politicians during a spiritual retreat. Was the Pope's kiss, in your opinion, and actions, were they honored by South Sudanese leaders?
Sincerely, Pope's kiss is not honored by our South Sudanese leaders because the kiss of Pope, it means after the kiss, our leaders are supposed to deliver peace and stability in the country through implementing the revitalized agreement that they signed and embracing the Rome peace processes. And remember, Pope have called them that I speak to you as a brother, stay in peace. But since the case of Pope, our leaders have never stayed in peace. There were a lot of violence that were happening among the parties that are headed by our leaders, whom their feet were kissed by Pope. So sincerely, I would say Pope kiss was not honored.
What does Pope Francis' kiss mean to you as a South Sudanese activist?
It has a great meaning for me. One, the kiss of Pope is telling our leaders that our leaders have a primary responsibility for making peace to prevail. And our leaders should also take responsibility of compromising on their political differences to make peace prevail. It also means for me that as a spiritual leader is telling our leaders that with the faith of Christianity, which tells us that whenever you're in enmity with somebody, love your enemy as you love yourself. It means our leaders are supposed to have trust and confidence as the top leaders of this country, delivering the country from the current situation to stability. That's the meaning of Pope's kiss for me.
Pope Francis urged the leaders to unite in peace when he stated, "I ask you as a brother, remain in peace. I ask you from the heart, let us move forward. There will be many problems, but don't be afraid. Go forward, resolve the problems." Have South Sudanese leaders respected the call made by the Pope?
They have not respected the call made by Pope. This call was made 3 years ago during the first kiss of the Pope, which is in April, 11th April 2019. And since that time, the level of mistrust among our leaders to work as a brothers and sisters between His Excellency President and his First Vice President was completely low. So they have not respected that. And that particular call of Pope Francis is telling them, as much politically you disagree, time has come for you to work as a brothers and sisters to offer South Sudanese peace and stability. So I don't feel that they have really done that, because if you look immediately after that call, there were defections from IO to SSPDF, which is itself a violation of the agreement, which is itself undermining the spirit of being brothers. And defection have been embraced until we end up having a Kitgwang group which break out of IO and sign their own agreement with the government. And the Kitgwang group are out there. And as I mentioned before, is that also the Kitgwang group today have been calling the advance team to leave. So I would like to say that His Excellency President, First Vice President have not honored, and plus other Vice President, by the way, they have not honored the statement or the call made by Pope for them to stay as a brothers and make peace prevail. Or even if they're implementing the peace is implementation is not soft. They will face some challenges, but all those challenges should keep them remain as a brothers that will work together and deliver the country out of violence. As we're speaking now, we have lost quite a number of good lives of innocent citizens and civilians right from the day Pope kissed the feet. We wish that after the kiss, when the Pope kissed their feet, wish after that they could have stopped claiming lives of innocent civilians and properties. But if you count lives lost after the kiss of Pope and properties lost after the kiss of Pope, it's really huge. And it's a figure that is disturbing. And start asking, have they listened to Pope? Then the conclusion is that they have not listened to Pope and they keep doing their own things. So the question is, when will they have the political will to accept such calls? And we hope that the visit of Pope will challenge them to demonstrate how much have they respected that call made by Pope.
South Sudan will be expecting Pope Francis and the Most Reverend Justin Welby to visit the country this coming July. What do the South Sudanese politicians have to offer to the spiritual leaders once they arrive in Juba?
Our leaders have little to offer to these top religious leaders that are coming to Juba, because what they could have done is that they could have offered how much have they made peace and stability prevail in the country. They have little to offer. Among what they can offer is they can talk about the unification of the command structure. They may talk about some of the economical reforms that have been acknowledged by Troika and other international financial institutions like IMF and World Bank. They may talk about the appointments that they have done at the various levels. They may talk little about what they are now struggling to work around the constitution-making process, and then the process of healing and reconciliation. They may talk about that, but that's very little. Much of the time they're going to do, or much of the offers, they're going to seek apologies, they're going to make a lot of excuses, and they will still ask the leaders to bless them, to pray for them more. That's what they're going to offer. So they're going to offer little, because they could have offered much if they could have shown, or if they could have delivered the revitalized peace agreement to a certain level. And among the things they could have delivered, if they could have created a conducive environment that we can say this environment is now a good environment for delivering of elections. But also, if we could have seen that the humanitarian community are not facing challenges in terms of looting, harassment of humanitarian workers, that they could have tell these religious leaders who have improved the situation. And if the tension among themselves could have diffused, but as the leaders are coming to Juba, less than 4 months that the leaders are going to arrive in July, they were having tension in Juba until the president has to address the nation. And they have to go for frictions to the level that Sudan have to force them to again renegotiate implementation of one of the chapters of the revitalization agreement. So in conclusion, like I say, they have little to offer, but that will be a check on them. Specifically, the two religious leaders are doing a follow-up, because it's for the first time that such top religious leaders are having a joint mission to a state in conflict like South Sudan in Africa. And I think that means a lot in terms of checking our leaders, how much have they respected the outcome of the political retreat which was done in Vatican in 2019.
SEPO is rolling out a campaign under the theme, Remember Pope Francis, Kiss for Peace. Tell us more about it.
This particular campaign, it was designed by SEPO to commemorate the kiss of Pope on the feet of our leaders. And remember, in 2019, Pope kissed the feet of our leaders on the 11th of April. So every 11th of the year, we commemorate the kiss of Pope. And the idea is also, we use a campaign to remind our leaders about their responsibility and obligation, that they should remember the kiss of Pope. It's a call for them to make peace and stability prevail in the country. So it's a nationwide campaign that brings it to the center, taking responsibility for holding our leaders accountable with regard to the quest for peace and stability in this country. So the campaign is to tell our leaders, remember the kiss of Pope, but also the campaign is intended to bring the citizen to a center where they can question our leaders. Can you remember the Pope's kiss? And can you remember the messages, the words that Pope have told you to do as a Christian? Because all of them are Christian leaders that stood before Pope. So I think that for me, the campaign is intending to bring back the importance of the kiss of Pope on their feet and to remind them, take primary responsibility of making peace and stability prevail in this country as a Christian nation.
If you were given a chance to pass a message to Pope Francis and the Most Reverend Justin Welby, what would your message be to them?
My message will be straightforward, calling them to remain committed and to stand up and to keep on pressing our leaders to deliver peace and stability to the population of the innocent citizens of South Sudan, whom are Christians. And as Christianity teaches us that let's love our enemies as we love ourselves, Christianity teaches us that we should not hate ourselves to the level that we claim lives of innocent citizens, we destroy their properties. So I will call them, let them not lift off their attention from South Sudan, let them not lift on their fingers. They should use the spiritual power they have to make sure that our leaders take responsibility of making peace and stability prevail. That's what I will tell them. And also I'll tell them that the power you have, the spiritual responsibility you have, you should utilize it maximally for making peace and stability prevail in South Sudan. So they should not get tired of South Sudan. They should keep on praying for us. They should keep on questioning our leaders to deliver peace and stability, because that's what we want on the earth as South Sudanese, as citizens of the Christian community.
On the same note, what message would you deliver, if you had the chance to South Sudanese leaders, as well as the population itself, as we're making preparation for the leaders, the spiritual leaders' arrival?
My message first is that our leaders need to change their political attitudes. The enmity that they have developed among themselves, they need to really walk away from that. They should not see themselves as enemies. Politically, people do disagree, but political disagreement shouldn't be a subject of holding a nation hostage to violence, to loss of lives, to commitment of sexual abuses, and to make sure that actual rule of law cannot prevail. We see a collapse in the rule of law. So my message to our leaders will be, change your attitudes. From a level of deficit in trust and confidence, please move to a stage where you have high level of trust and confidence of working together as a parties and ensuring that you exercise the spiritual power you have, that you should love yourself as a friends, though you are enemies politically, and once you're together, deliver peace and stability in this country. That will be my message to our leaders. And to the citizen, I will tell our citizen that we don't need to keep quiet. We need to keep on asking. We need to keep on calling our leaders to make peace prevail. And we need to keep on telling our leaders the truth of what they should do, because the truth will set us free when we tell them the truth. But if we entertain the lies, then we'll never realize peace in this country. So for me, for both the government and the citizen, is that peace is the best option we want. We don't have any other option. Violence never gain, peace gain us. So we need to make sure that the visit of the two top Christian religious leaders should offer an opportunity of changing our hearts, of turning our attitudes from thinking about ourselves as enemies or treating ourselves as enemies to a level that we love each other as we are taught by Christianity, and should make South Sudan as a peaceful nation, that the rest of the nations will talk about it, rather than the nations all over the world speaking about violence in South Sudan that is claiming lives of innocent civilians and their properties.
I'd like to ask you about the constitutional making process. It was brought before the parliament. What is your thought on it?
You know, the exit strategy for the country, or the exit strategy for South Sudan politically, we need to exit through elections. But we can't have elections if we don't have a constitution that that tells the next system of governance, the term of office for leaders. So constitutional process is very good. So right now we're still backward. We're still talking about an enactment of a legislation to define how the constitution making process will look like. So it's a bill for constitution making process, which will have been delayed for the last almost 2.5 years. So they took it last week for the first time, taken to the parliament by the Minister of Justice for readings. And my fear is that since there's an appetite of certain group of politicians who want to have a quick elections, they're going to rush this process. Constitution making process in terms of enactment of the bill for the constitution making process, they're going to hurry it. Even enacting legislation for transitional justice, they're going to hurry it simply because they want to go for a quick fixed elections. So this is a challenge. But of course, the appeal is that as civil society, we keep on calling the citizen. The process for enactment of the legislation for the constitution making process, we should be keen, specifically when it comes to public hearings, because the parliament is going to organize public hearings. So we need to intervene in the public hearings to make sure that we influence the content of the Constitution Making Bill 2022. At the same time, also the Transitional Justice Legislation 2022. So these are processes that are now done in rush simply because people want to take the box of political legitimacy through elections. But the question is, do we have conducive environment for elections where still we don't have unified forces, where communities are killing themselves here and there? Almost every day, we're losing 10 to 15 people due to intercommunal violence, and flood is coming. So the question is, do we have the conducive environment for elections? Never forget about the issues related to legislation reforms, to institutional reforms that are associated with the elections. So that is a challenge, is that we're going to have a quick processes for fixing some of these political activities.
The unified command structure, which was an integral part of the peace agreement, has recently been rolled out. What are your thoughts on it?
It is a key milestone. It's a key steps in implementation of the Chapter 2 of the Revitalized Agreement. You know, when you talk about unification of forces, you can't unify forces of over 7 parties if you don't have a unified command structure. So you need to make sure that you have a structure that is centralized as a single center of order and directives in terms of security and defense. So the move for forming the unified command structure is a very key action that could have been delivered 2 years ago, or could have been done since 2020 actually. We could have realized this, or towards late 2019. But now they have just formed it. The challenge before this unified command structure is for them to gain trust and confidence among themselves, to work as a national institution that is tasked to transform or to unify the different security institutions of the various parties. So they have the obligation to reform defense and security sector, and they have the obligation to make sure that security and defense sector institutions pay allegiance to the Constitution rather than to the parties where they're coming from, or to individuals that might have been their bosses, or to political ideology that they have come from. Time has come for them now to behave as a one entity for defense and security and deliver this country to the situation we're in. Of course, the challenge is, will they have the political support of the top leadership, both in terms of giving them the space to operate independently for transforming the security defense sector? Will they be financed? Because unification of armed forces require finances. And will they take DDR as a very key thing, because massive population under the unification are going to lose their jobs from being in uniform. They have to be reintegrated to civilian life. But will the political leadership offer that support politically and financially? Otherwise, if they're not given, then the unification of the army or this unified command structure will drag their feet, like what I've seen with the previous mechanism, not implementing anything. And of course, before them, they have the challenge of at least 70% of the individuals in the unified command structure are not individuals who have directly participated in the agreement. So they need to be oriented to understand their task and their responsibility. And before them, they have other groups which are break out, like the Kitugwang group. How will they deal with them? And as we're speaking with you now, the Kitugwang group, in terms of Simon Garuch, have called his advance team to leave Juba and join him. Does that mean he is discontented with the unification of the command structure where he's left out? Does that mean that he's going to declare another war? These are all responsibility and tasks before the unified command structure to deliver this country from the current situation we're in to a peace. And I hope that they will act as nationalists. They'll not act as tribal affiliate entities or political party affiliate entities. And I hope they pay the allegiance to the Constitution rather than to their parties or to the individuals whom they call them as commanders-in-chief or their commanders at senior position. That's the challenge before them. But it's an idea that we welcome it. It's a good move, but it's a late move, but it's better than having nothing.
I would like to address this. Even with the unified command structure, there are citizens who are concerned that turmoil will continue to prevail within the country, as what we have seen happening in Upper Nile as well as Unity State. So does the implementation of the unified command structure have great relevance to ensuring peace and stability within the country prevails?
You know, this unified command structure, if it's politically supported in terms of the principles, that they don't play a bucket and games around the unified structure, they can really move and they can make peace prevail. But we have realized that we have field commanders in various locations in Unity and Upper Nile that are actually declaring war against each other without respecting few frameworks that their leaders have agreed upon. For instance, one of the frameworks is the recent action plan for the implementation of Chapter 2, which was mediated by and Salva Kiir Mayardit, and we have the IO under the Commander-in-Chief of Riek Machar. So after that processes, when they signed that particular framework, they have agreed that immediately their ground forces have to cease hostility. There were no hostilities ceased. Violence continue in Lair area, and violence also continue in Joda, in the town control between the SSPDF and the IO. They're running over country Maban, and we have Mirmir being exchanged between the IO and the SSPDF in terms of control. And as we speak now, still violence are going on. Today at around 4 p.m., which is about 3 or 4 hours ago, still active violence going on. So the challenge is, will the unified command structure have the political will and will have the support that they can assert order in terms of security and defense to make sure that ground commanders who feels they pay allegiance to the principle than to the institutional setup like the unified command structure? Will the command structure discipline those ground commanders? Because one thing that I would like to share with the audience is that some ground commanders are using violence as a source of livelihood, because if they shoot bullets at each other, they will receive a support, they will receive money, and that one they earn their living from it. So the ground commanders who are addicted to violence as a source of livelihood, as access to income, will the principal continue embracing that besides having a unified command structure? So one of the challenge for the unified command structure, can they roll out quickly and tour all the hotspot areas around Pagak, around Maiwood, around Koch, around Longochuk, and tell those ground commanders, stop the confrontation among yourselves? The other thing you start asking, are the principal giving directives? Are the principal not concerned? Because the principal would have issued a quick order and telling ground commanders, abstain from violating the permanent ceasefire and please cease hostility. But we have never heard of that. As we're speaking with you now, 4 hours ago, we have lost lives of innocent citizens around some parts of Unity State and some parts of Malaka.
Thank you, Mr. Edmund Yakani, the Executive Director of Community Empowerment for Progress Organization, CEPO. Thank you for joining me here on Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you too for hosting me.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page at Sunrise Media.